Colleen Lila Lupe was born March 7, 1933, to Lavinia Williams and George Burke at Hood River, Oregon. She entered into rest December 28, 2021.
My dad and I went on a trip with my grandma. We went to South Dakota. So I was 16. What I really remember about the trip was I got to see my grandma in her element. I really admired seeing how the people loved my grandma. And the power and the strength that flowed through her. I remember that.
So my mother grew up in Kamiai. They had a house up there that my grandmother had, and my mom had a sister and 4 brothers. I always remember my mom talking about Kamiai. It was about all these hills she couldn't wait to get out of Kamiai and live life, I guess, something different than what a small city was. So this is where our grandmother lived and she raised her children, which was our mother, lived in a house here. Now it's very depleted down to just some boards, but my grandma would always drive by here. Look, it's just getting so down, and we wish they would just tear it down, but it's family history. Mom and Gram did raise all her children, and singly also. You know, she lost her husband when she was pregnant with her second child. My mom's the oldest of 6, so it was always Mom and Gram being a very strong woman in our lives, you know, very strong. You know, standing up for us and teaching us how to stand up. She was a victim of domestic violence, so my mom found faith early to get her through the hardships, and that's where that kind of grounded her. My mom's native name was, I don't know how you pronounce it in Nimipu, but it meant little deer crying in a meadow. That was her beginnings of what she was. She felt powerless, but in the end, through faith, she became a very strong woman to help support other people. And so she grounded herself in faith and by prayer and went across tribal lands to help many people. I remember her faith being so strong and praying that whatever came at her, that's what she was going to rely on, was prayer. Mom used to live on a reservation, but she came into the city for police protection. By then, her and my father had split up, and so she moved in with my grandmother. Our grandmother helped take care of the children. My mom, I don't know if that was pre-welfare, whatever, but she would work in the pea factories, potato picking, stuff like that to make a living. When I was younger, what I remember, we were in Lewiston, lived across the street from the church we went to, and I always remember she was at work and we got into trouble because me and my cousin talked Jeanette into putting a bean in her ear, and Grandma tried to help and rinse it, but the more a bean gets wet, the more it swells. Next thing she's going to emergency and Mom had to leave work and we got into trouble. That was probably one of my craziest early memories of Mom working and not being there, and that we always had to mind Gram and not do stupid stuff. I mean, we always felt bad when we said, yeah, we never got to watch those Disney movies. They always came on Sunday night and we were in church. Those things, you know. And she prayed constantly. Constantly, you could hear Mom praying.
But anyway, I've had an interesting life. Very interesting life. And me who was so afraid, I was afraid of my own shadow. That's why when I first began with the Lord, I was afraid. I was afraid to open my mouth.
Colleen was an ordained minister who traveled throughout the United States and Canada over a 60-year period. My mom was fiercely independent. She lived alone in cul-de-sac for probably 20, 25 years. And she loved her independence. And so she had her own vehicle. She loved to travel. She'd go to different states, and she wasn't afraid to go on the road by herself.
I remember as a child, like a young child, I must have been so proud of her or something, because I told my church friends, one day when I grow up, I'm going to be just like my grandma. I'm going to preach for a long time and sing kind of how she sings. But
Praise God, praise God, praise God.
I was really impressed with how people were willing to help my grandmother so easily, all the time. My grandma represented love and networking and fortitude. I know that my grandma had some hard times, so I never could imagine what all that took. So I just always knew that my grandma was so strong.
When our mother moved to South Dakota, the star quilts is what they make, and so she became so interested. She's always kind of fiddled around with sewing stuff, but nothing as major as the star quilt. So a few of the older ladies showed her how to make the star quilt. She spent a lot of time on that.
So her living room had this big quilting frame with a blanket on it, and she was very known for making star quilts. So when I was there, when I was really little, I remember her working on her star quilt.
she was always on the go. She was always, praying and taking care of people. So
She had a good mind. My mom, because of what she went through, she dropped out of school because she was kind of sickly. But in her later years, she wanted to obtain, to become a judge.
and in my mind, I picture her with her hands up, praying. She's prayed probably countless times every single day of her life, from the moment that I remember her till the moment that she passed. You didn't even have to tell her your whole problem or what you were wanting prayer for. She would just hit it just right on, and she would know what to pray for, and it would just kind of blow your mind. It would be like, I didn't even say anything to anybody about this, but it's like she knows you. She could see into you like that in a good way and take care of you.
My mom had much boldness, so some difficult things that would occur, my mom would just more or less take the bull by the horns and deal with issues that were hard. But she did it with love and kindness, but she wasn't fearful to handle difficult matters.
She was somebody that you wanted there. She was somebody that you would tell first. She was somebody that would be strong. Just her knowing about it is her giving her an ability to pray for it, and that's taking care of your, whatever it is. So I would say that's who she is. She's a strong woman. Yeah.
There was a young lady here that lived in Lapway. When she was born, her mom and dad sent for my mom to come pray at the hospital because when she was born, there was some kind of brain damage. They said she probably won't last long at all. So there was nothing else more they could think to do but call my mom up. So my mom went to pray for her, and she was made whole, and she became a great woman on the Nez Perce tribe. She's well known, and she's got a good mind. Yeah, very educated woman. And so her mom was the one that shared that story with me, and it just touched me. I think I just stood there crying, and it's just, just to know another story of what my mom has done, Always out and about looking for something more she could do for someone else.
To her, it was daily life. It was just who she was meant to be.
And somebody could oppose me, and I just give in and I just back away. That's the way I was. I soon had to learn, if I want to have any effect, I better make a stand and not run away. And that was hard for me because I like to please people. But I learned. To this day, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for all that I know.
One time, my nephew, who I raised as my son, he was really young, and they went over to Washington. So they were on I-5, and my mother had went down the wrong side of the highway, and she got pulled over, and that's when she got ticketed, and that's how she ended up losing her license, because she didn't remember she had court over there to deal with. And so I didn't realize that was maybe the beginning. We just thought maybe it was something with age. So one day she comes to my house and she goes, "Can you come here for a minute?" So I'd already been standing outside. So I go, "Yeah." So I come over and she points down to her feet. She goes, "Can you tell me what those are?" I go, "What?" She goes, "Those things right there." And she was talking about the gas and the brakes. And I go, "This is the brakes." And I go, so she goes, "To stop?" I get to stop. And I go, "That is the accelerator, so I can drive, speed up." I go, "Yeah." Okay. She goes, "And where's the clutch?" I go, "There's no clutch. You're in an automatic." She goes, "Okay." And I kind of like, wow, I thought she was just having a bad day. And it was my first indication that something was going on.
So when I first met Colleen in 2018, I was stopping by her and Jeanette's house a few times a week to walk with Jeanette. While I was there, I'd have conversation with Colleen, so she knew who I was. But as her disease progressed, she was starting to forget familiar people, and I was one of those people she was starting to forget. When I go back and I try to remember the first time I seen signs and symptoms of Colleen maybe going through dementia, it was just the repetitiveness. I just knew it was a little odd when I would go to the house and she would share the same story over and over. Or sometimes I would see the family trying to encourage her to take a shower, and she was pretty resistant on wanting to shower. And I remember when I go to the house, and it was usually Sonia that could convince her that she needed to shower, because she thought she showered that day, or wearing the same clothes. Sometimes she'd be wearing the same clothes for a few days, and the girls would try to convince her that she needed to change her clothing. And that was not typical of Colleen.
When I was still in Washington and I came to visit from out of town, my grandma pulled up in her car, and she was still driving at this time. She had an older car, and she was unloading like food, groceries. I don't know if it was from a food bank, but a lot of it was canned stuff that, who knows, she could have canned herself. I'm not sure. And so automatically, you know, you get up and you go help. And I went out there to help her, and I told her, "Hi, Grandma." And she looked at me, and I could tell she didn't like greet me like she would normally. She didn't give me a hug, and she just left immediately after unloading stuff and didn't talk to me. So I was hurt. I thought, you know, she's just so mad at me. But it wasn't until later on that I found out that she was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's at that time, and she just didn't recognize me.
We weren't really on to what was going on yet. She said she couldn't see anymore, so she hadn't been working on her quilts anymore. And I remember one day she had asked me if I would come out and help her move her fabrics and stuff. She was becoming concerned about her Pendleton blankets. She was starting to get suspicious that my aunties were gonna steal her blankets. So I started asking her questions, trying to figure out why she felt that way. She would talk about her things not being where she thought they were. She would go to the back room and she would come back out, and her blankets would be moved or things would be moved in a different spot. This was definitely when she uncharacteristically spoke ill of anyone, let alone it being her daughters that were so close to her and so have taken care of her most of her life. Like, they traveled together and did everything together. They were inseparable. And so to hear her speak ill of my aunties was devastating, but I definitely wanted to help her feel safe and do whatever I could to help her feel safe. And maybe in doing that, I also felt like maybe she wouldn't speak ill directly to them. So I was trying to save them from some heartbreak too. So she brought her collection of blankets to my house. And then one day she showed up to my house and she was frantic. She'd forgotten where they were. I think I may have had them somewhere between 6 and 9 months. I just remember being really concerned, and I wanted to help her. I wanted her to feel safe.
So this is the prayer road that my mom calls her prayer road. It's between cul-de-sac and Lapway, and she always would drive this road and she would pray in between here and Lapway. And later on, when she didn't have a car anymore, she said she would walk this 8 miles every day. And we were thinking, oh, I hope everybody does not believe we let her walk 8 miles every day.
The final step for her living alone was, it was winter time, and I always did this. We'd always have to go up there because for some reason she liked to turn the power circuit off, and she'd unplug things. And I go, Mom, you have to keep this heater on because it freezes. Your pipes will freeze. Well, she went in there one time and just shut everything off. And so by the time we didn't even go up to her house to check. The landlady called and said they noticed the whole neighborhood start complaining about low water pressure, and she turned everything off so the pipes broke, so water was pouring out throughout her house, her trailer, and underneath. And then she was evicted because of the damage. So middle of winter, we're packing her up, and that winter was the year, 2019 is the year she moved in with my sister.
She lived with me in my house probably like the last 3 years of her life.
So she moved in my sister's winter of 19. The pandemic hit by that next March, April, and so things just turned hard then, and I was trying to protect her. So I go, there's a pandemic going on. You can't wander off anymore. They want you to stay home. And all she said, ooh, so scary. And then forget about it, and would still find her wandering the streets, That's why I tried to tell my brother when he took her to town that day by himself. Same story all the way down to town, same story all the way back out. And as soon as I don't know how she did it, she just almost take a breath and start it right back over, so yeah. So I guess I think we kind of almost learned more patience anyway, so we didn't want her to feel bad. It was the last year of my sister's life, and she passed away in April. So we went through all of that, and Mom she took it pretty hard, but then forget and wanted to know where we took Livy and when is Livy coming home. And it just seemed, I think that loss just kind of almost deteriorated her more.
I knew that she did a lot for her family, and so I felt like I wanted to do just as much. So at the end of this season, I had gone through a lot with the job, and so I was very tired, and I talked with a person that used to work in the HR department, and so they began to talk to me about maybe you can go into early retirement. Maybe you can look at getting paid for being a care provider for your mother. And so I was trying to find options of how to make it all work because I felt like I was juggling everything. It was starting to take effect on my body. I was aching in my shoulders. At one point, I had a knee replacement, and I remember at the time having double pneumonia. I remember my mom coming into my room, and I remember being so tired. And my mom came in. I wish I had beef stew, because she knew I could cook. I'm a cook by profession, and I go, I wish I could too, but I can't even get up. By then, I bawled. Felt a little bit frustrated and tired. And my mom just felt such compassion. And she began to pray. There was moments that she would have clarity. And it was like the mom that I remembered. And so she prayed for me. And I remember being so touched that she could reach through like the mom that I could count on. And but it's those things like that, like that mean a lot. Just to see her moments of, like I said, coming to pray for me when I really needed it, and being the mom that I needed. And like she always inspired me to be strong and to have faith like her. And she loved to quilt. One time, she took my star quilt home and she took it apart because it was ripped in one part, and she took all the part to diamonds. She would cut up anything. Her shirts, she would cut up just odd things to make diamonds because she's preparing to make star quilts to sell.
Oh, she loved doing it. It kind of almost consumed her. So that's why she started cutting everything up. I mean, she cut up crazy. I found underwear cut up. I'd go to her house and she'd just have piles and piles of diamonds just all over the floor, on the couches and, on her bed. And
your clothes would be in your own room, a separate whole bedroom than hers, but somehow, like if I was gone during a day and I come back, she would have something of mine. It could be brand new with tags on it. It could be anything. It would be something from my aunt's room or whatever, but you'd find your clothes in her room. You'd be lucky if you get it before she cut it. But yeah, she would cut clothes up in material and jeans, it could be anything, into little triangles and get it ready for her star quilts.
My mom loved to always keep busy, so she used to try to grow a garden in her backyard, and she would pick up weeds. Her yard was like dirt. She picked up all the grass because she was thinking they were weeds.
I planted flowers one year and she kind of picked them and had to try to put it back together, but yeah. You'd have to tell her, those are flowers, Grandma.
And so sometimes she would be so tired of bending over that her legs would cramp.
I mean, this is like long periods of time. It's not a couple of minutes or 30 minutes. It's a couple of hours at a time. I mean, and not just once a day, but maybe 2 or 3 times a day. But she would be standing up, in straight, just slumped over, picking things up one thing at a time. It could be a stick, a rock. Nobody tries to clean the outside by picking things up one at a time. You'll grab a rake, you'll grab a broom, something like that, but not her. She just had this thing, and I don't know what it was because that's not how she used to clean a long time ago. I think it had to do with Alzheimer's, dementia, because she never did that before.
She scared us. We took her to mountains a few times, but we'd always call for her. We wouldn't wander too far away from her. And I go, you can sit right here. There's a whole bunch of huckleberries all around you. We'll give her a bucket. And so I'd go check on her, and she wasn't picking huckleberries. She was cleaning the woods, weeding out there. It was like, Mom, what are you doing? We're here to pick huckleberries. Well, they just left a mess out here. I go, it's the forest, Mom. It's the woods. It's how it looks. It was like, we just, learn to let her do those things and not get after her as much. She would talk about her sister coming to visit her
Her sister, since I can remember, has always been in a wheelchair. She would have where my father came to visit her, and he was like more or less drunk and bothering her, but he had been passed away, deceased for a number of years. I remember she was saying the cat from next door had crawled under, and she could hear noise underneath her pipes. Some kind of paranoia stuff, maybe neighbors bothering her.
She started visiting my office regularly because my office was in walking distance from her home. And she came and she told me the same 3 stories every day. I think it was 3. It felt like 3, but it was the same stories every day. And one day my grandma shows up and she's not dressed for the weather. She is wearing her spring wear, and there was probably 3 inches of snow on the ground. And so I asked her what she was doing, and she said that she was going down to the cafe for her daily coffee. And it was really odd. It snowed in the springtime.
I knew of her. I knew, like, I seen her wander before. And during that time too, I was kind of like, worried about her because she's an elder, and I know that her family is a good family. So I was like kind of worried, like, do they know she's out wandering? Or where's she going? Actually, one time I do remember though that I kind of wanted to follow her to make sure she's okay. I mean, as a community member, it's hard to know what to do in that situation. You see an elder wandering.
One time, Colleen was wandering down by where the social services building is, and she fell on the sidewalk and she had scraped up knees. So I pulled over to help her. I was trying to tell her I was Jessica, I was Jeanette's friend, and I was trying to get her into the car, and she didn't recognize who I was.
So I had some of my own theories going on with my grandma and my visits with her. She would go back and forth between maybe present day and her childhood. I started speculating that she maybe was just in a different time in her mind altogether. And I know this because there were times when she thought I was one of her daughters.
One time I went to Jeanette's house and Colleen was standing at the front window looking outside. Jeanette was in the kitchen canning, so I went in there and Colleen was telling me the same story over and over. She was just standing there reliving old memories. But I went into the kitchen and she said, Mom's been standing at the window for quite some time and she was waiting for one of her high school sweethearts that used to own a red car.
I would find her like up at really odd hours, so hiding. Sometimes she had fell between the bed and the dresser, and she would be seeing things outside. She would say my dad was on the other side of the fence trying to bother her.
He passed a long time ago, but I from stories that I've heard from the family, he was kind of very, he was a mean guy. He was violent at times. There was like domestic abuse issues, and she would be scared, thinking that somebody's like that he's coming to get her or gonna, mad at her for some reason and gonna come and harm her in some way. So she would be scared, yeah.
There were times I would be afraid of her going outside the house. So I would put a big heavy couch in front of the front door, and then I would try to block out the back door, move something over there so she couldn't move it and get out and wander and not be safe. She was always we would have family gatherings And she would be telling us to get down because there's somebody out there and they're with a gun. And she's like on the phone with the police, and she'd be warning us that we needed to be safe and don't be speaking so loud because they'll hear you. I remember, trying to comfort her with prayer. I would put my hand upon her head and I would pray for peace. And I would always quote her scripture. I said, in the Bible, you always taught us that, Mom, I go, this word of God that you always loved is not just written in this hard Bible, but it's written upon your heart. It became flesh of your flesh and bone of your bone. And the word of God says that he did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love. And she goes, a sound mind. She would remember that scripture because that's who she was. It was not just a dead letter to her. It was life and guidance. And so I would pray for peace to come. She loved singing Amazing Grace, was her favorite one. She had a certain style of singing it, which I have a video we can share.
In the final days, actually my final visit with her, I had become the person that she was concerned with stealing her blankets. You see the confusion, and if they can grow past that, then you see the heartbreak. And if they can't grow past that, then it becomes an argument back and forth. And so then you have to decide whether you're going to concede or not. And that is the personal part where it becomes frustrating. It's trying to decide if you're going to own it or if you're going to try to convince your loved one that there's just information they're not understanding.
I think we went one whole year with Mom like that at Jeanette's, and I said, Jeanette, it's time we kind of put her, because she's taken off way too much and falling down, and we had to come to a decision as a family that we had to put her in a home. And at that point, we were looking at places that would accept her into some kind of community. But there, but we would take a guitar in there. Me and my sister Alexis would go visit her, and she would kind of remember. She kind of almost forgot us, but then we would start to sing, and she would like, I have a daughter that plays guitar, or. But once we started to get the singing, it kind of like bring her memory back, and then she would start remembering words. And the only thing that made us chuckle was she was like, I remember writing this song. But she didn't write the song, but she would remember the lyrics. And so that's why we would always try to ground her back with who she was, with her faith, by filling the love of the songs and music.
Grace, my daughter, was born and she had had trouble, and my grandma had to come pray. My aunties came and prayed over me and my daughter. And so the last visit with my grandma, her and my grandma were sitting on the couch at Livy's house. She had forgotten who people were around her. She had forgotten all of us. But she sat with my daughter, and she told her, God told me that you had a hard time coming, and that you're here because of prayer. There were so many of us there. Everybody was there. But she was just so content just visiting with Grace and telling her about how God had brought her through.
Yeah, she was dropped at the nursing home, broke her hip. We had to decide to let her suffer or go ahead and let it get fixed. And I go, well, I don't want her suffering with a broken hip, you know. I think she stroked out during the surgery. When she came out, she could no longer swallow. And so they go, do you want to put a feeding tube in her? And I said, no. They asked, so you guys are just going for hospice? I go, yeah, because she's asked the last few times, can I just go home now? Which means not to our house, but her heavenly home. And we understood that. It wasn't easy to do that, but we learned it was best for her. Mm-hmm.
At that point, we had to move her to hospice. Me and my sister had gone on Christmas Eve. She was in a room with another lady, and she was just praying, oh God, Jesus, just help me. Help me, Jesus. She was in pain. And so I grabbed my Bible. I go, Mom, we're gonna read to you. And I read to her the birth of Jesus Christ, the Christmas story that we all know. And then we prayed with her. And then we decided at that time, we're gonna bring her home. Christmas Eve landed on a Saturday that year. And so we start moving forward to bring her home so she could be back in my home and be comfortable. Monday, something happened. We were gonna have the bed delivered in, and early Tuesday morning, she left us. And family, people, she had friends from all over the country and to Canada, and they so wanted to come, but the snow impacted them. They couldn't make it. So it ended up just being mostly our family, and we had to take her all the way up to Kamyai. And we did it as a family. We didn't have the hearse. We carried her in one of our vehicles, and I remember burying her. It was dark and cold, but we were doing our best to pay our respects to her mom in the only way we knew how, till the end. And we still miss her 3 years later. Colleen was an ordained minister who traveled throughout the United States and Canada over a 60-year period. She had a strong voice, intercessory prayer, and deliverance ministry. She would assist people by counseling domestic and family issues. She would attend the courts to advocate for those in need. There were also times when she'd be led to speak with several Neptic leaders to encourage and provide them with her wisdom. It was so precious at the time, but it was a little bit frustrating trying to make it all work. But I pushed myself hard, and I think it's part of grief when you have regrets. I wish I could have pushed harder, but I did all I could, and I knew she understood.
Before Alzheimer's, she would go anywhere and do anything. Even by herself, she could take these long road trips, and it was all for her faith. She was called to come to certain places to go pray over a person or a whole people or a whole tribe or somebody, and she would go and do that. And she would go from one place to the next and just kind of stop back at home. She had seasons where she did not even live at home. To go from that to having to be able to be taken care of and not being able to go, where you want to go and do what you want to do, and not even knowing part of the time where you're supposed to be at or that you don't have your home. I think for some people, in our family, it was just too much for them to see to see it like that.
I think I would have been more silent instead of answering her back. because, I would want her to realize she was repeating herself. And so I'd let her know, but other times I could do it, but it was very frustrating,
So my take on helping my grandma when she would forget things or when she would ask things, even if it was just moments something said or informed to her moments before, I had decided early on that I would tell her as if I had never told her before. And that was a different take than how some others managed it in our family. I would try to encourage her to tell her with the same emphasis and the same peace and understanding as if she'd never said it before. So that's what I had done. And I talked to my mom about it, and my mom liked that take. So I think that it's hard, and after dealing with it for so long, it's hard to do. So I think that just reminding yourself that even though you know that you may have said something, they don't. So just pretend like it was the first time, even if it's the 100th.
Traditionally, we don't even have a word for Alzheimer's or dementia, so the concept of dementia is new to people, and the word dementia is often scary to talk about. I think it's hard to talk about dementia because of the fear or the embarrassment attached to the word dementia.
I would say that to somebody getting ready to go into this season, there is going to be a time when your loved one may become stuck in a time, and the time might not be conducive to the weather and the season outside.
If I had known the markers and have talked to the family about her health, if I had known that she was diagnosed already, I would not have let it affect me the way it did. I would have just still been, telling her I love her and hug her anyway, even though I look like a stranger to her. I would have still just, accepted anything that she had to tell me, no matter how it made me feel. I would have just been there for her as much as I could. Yeah.
It's very common not to recognize the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's and dementia. After hearing the family's story about Colleen, there was signs and symptoms that Colleen showed in 2016. But it wasn't until 2021 that Colleen was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia. Later that year, she was called home.
My mom had 10 of us children, and then there was 36 grandchildren, 75 great-grandchildren, and then before Mom had passed, she had just had one great-great. And so it's like her legacy is huge.
Her legacy would be just, everything in our family that she's built with our faith, the whole family. I don't know, I just think she rooted us deep in our faith, and that's the best thing she could have ever done. It's gonna have more effect on our family in any way for a long time to come. It's seeds that she's planted, and I think that's the biggest thing that's gonna help us grow, help us love, help us be there for each other. The road looks like a roller coaster. It's going to be a roller coaster ride with emotions up and down, but you always have to be there for, your elder, your loved one that has Alzheimer's, dementia. It's not going to be easy, but, be there for them, love them, take care of them with dignity,
It's so important for everybody to know about Alzheimer's and dementia. That includes our primary care doctors, our first responders, our caregivers, our families, and our youth. The more people that know about Alzheimer's and dementia, the better we can care for our loved ones and our elders in our community. One of the goals of our program is to bring education and awareness to families, caregivers, and patients about signs and symptoms of dementia. By them knowing what the signs and symptoms are, they can reach out for further testing, which will open the doors for more services and support. Traditionally, as Native people, we grow up learning that it is important to take care of each other, especially our elders. One of the things that we also believe in is keeping our elders home within their own homes and within their own communities as long as possible. If I had somebody in my family that had dementia or Alzheimer's, I would hope that there wouldn't be much of a stigma attached to it. I would want my elder to feel comfortable, or my family to feel comfortable enough to seek help and to not feel ashamed or scared. Cherish the time that you have with your elder, because eventually the disease will take their life as it progresses.